All right, welcome back to the Titan Podcast. I am looking forward to this episode because we're going to talk about quiet quitting.
Again?
Yes, but...
What are your thoughts on quiet quitting, Crystal?
Yeah, now we have an expert here, a leadership expert, Crystal Lim-Lange. So what do you think?
Can I tell a story?
Sure.
Go for it.
When I was in investment banking, I was working on a trading floor at one point, okay? On the trading floor, when I was working there, there's many, many different chairs. And there's all these traders, making money. And one day, my boss brought me down and said, look at this trading floor. I said, looking at all these traders. And my boss said to me, every one of these chairs earns money. Every one of these chairs brings in X million dollars to the firm. The chairs earn the money, not the people who sit in them. So I was really shocked. I was like, what do you mean by the chair earns the money? And then that's when I realized, okay, if you do the bare minimum in your job, you're just a chair. You're going to put anybody in the chair will also earn money. Because you know what I mean? It's just like you're just a warm body in a chair. And if you want to really succeed and make a name for yourself, you gotta actually be somebody beyond the chair. When you walk out of that chair, when you move to your next job, what are you going to bring with you? What value add are you going to contribute to the firm beyond the chair? So when I talk about quiet quitting, right, this is this sentiment that I'm just going to be the chair. I'm just going to go to work and do the bare minimum, and whatever the chair requires of me, okay, I'm just going to give it. And then the end of the day at 5 o'clock, I'm just going to get up and I'm going to leave, and that's it. I'm not going to bring more of me and my life force and my energy and my learning and my passion to work than strictly necessary. Yeah, because this is, after all, just a job. It's just a role to me. I'm not judging. That is neither good nor bad. That's just what quiet quitting is. But what's interesting is that there's three different kinds of quiet quitters.
Wow, there's three?
Yeah.
I thought there was only one. Okay.
No, three different motivations for quiet quitting. The first type of quiet quitter is the person that actually just is a bit burnt out and wants better boundaries, okay? So they want, for whatever reason, it could be they have a newborn at home,
Right,
you,
yeah.
you for that season of your life, your career is just not the number one priority. Okay, so you're going to do whatever it takes, but it's not your priority, and you want to have better boundaries so that you can leave work, where it is, and focus on other parts of your life. Now, that boundaries kind of quiet quitter, I think is actually quite a healthy quiet quitter, because there's somebody who's clear about their priorities, and there's somebody who's very intentionally said that this is what works for me. There's no shame in that, okay?
I have a question to follow up on this.
Sure.
Do you see this type of quiet quitters doing it extensively, so over a long period of time, or do they after a while though, I gain my mojo back, and then I'm okay, I'm ready to go for it again?
Generally, the first type is the boundaries type, right? These are people who are very intentional. Yeah, and they're quite clear about who they are, which is why they are good at enforcing boundaries. This is what I stand for, this is what I don't want to stand for, right? And these kinds of people generally, in my experience, they tend to also craft their life quite intentionally. So these 2 years, I got a newborn. My career's not going to be number one. I'm going to work 3 days a week. Then after that, I'm going to put my career back on the burner again. And, we only have 3 or 4 burners, right? On a stove. You only got 3 or 4 fires, right? You got to choose, you got 12 pots. You can't put everything on the stove. Everything will come out half baked, right? You got to choose at every season of your life, what are you going to prioritize? In this season, is it my kids? Is it my relationship? Is it my spirituality, community? Is it my not-for-profit work? Is it my mind, emotions, my spirit, whatever it is. But we've all got all these different facets of our life, and we have to be quite intentional and have boundaries so that you don't get all the other pots coming on the stove when you only have got 3 burners, right?
So for a person like this, would you suggest that they be clear about what they want? Because sometimes I do see people like this, but they are rather unclear.
Yes.
And the message that they give their employer would be somewhat different than what they are hoping to expect of their own lives.
Yeah, I think it's important for both employee and employer to have regular coaching conversations or career development conversations, where this is once a month. You're just going to check in about hey, how do you feel your career is going? Do you feel you're learning? Do you feel you're growing? Do you think you're developing in the way, how much support you need, etc. So during these regular career conversations with your direct reports, this is a perfect opportunity opportunity to, for the, employee to share, you know what, I'm, right now, I'm still committed to this role, but there are other there are other things going on in my life which make it such that I need to leave work at 5 o'clock. And for the next 6 months, 1 year, this is really important to me because I have X, Y, Z other things. But it doesn't mean that I'm looking around. It doesn't mean I'm not interested. And it doesn't mean I'm disengaged. I just want you to know when sometimes you can't contact me or when I'm going off at 5 o'clock, it's because I have a newborn or I'm actually working on launching some other thing. But at the same time, I'm fully professional and committed to all my deliverables in this job.
Then would that put you in a compromised position? Because let's say you are, let's say you're in a very important role, but if you are unable to fulfill those tasks, would the employer just say, okay, yeah, that's fine, I accept it, and then move on to find somebody to replace you?
That is a danger, for sure. You got to understand, you got to know your audience.
Right.
Yeah. Like not all bosses are the same. You have some bosses who are very kind of like, okay, life is long. Like, you're going to go on maternity leave and, maybe take care of your child. And that's the priority. But we want you to work here for 10 years. So like by all means, we value that. And then other bosses are very short-termist.
Right.
And they're like, okay, this guy, their heart's no longer in it. I better go and like find somebody else. So
I think it also matters like at what point the company is, right?
Yes.
And like let's say if it's a startup, then they can't afford something like this.
Yeah.
But if it's maybe an MNC that perhaps have stronger welfare and stuff like that, then I think it's more acceptable.
yes, scarcity.
And it's not their money
abundance.
also, right? It's the company's money. So the manager gets to decide stuff
Totally.
like that.
In a situation, not just for startups, but MNCs as well, any company that's in a scarcity mentality when there isn't enough resources, funding, money to go around, that's where, they're going to start operating from a place of fear.
Right.
Yeah, and they're going to start like, looking out for themselves rather than like being more growth focused and more sustainable and human centered.
And that's always a danger because like anything could happen. Like, I mean, look at COVID, right? Like the companies that were so comfortable and doing well started having issues like that. And they start thinking about themselves rather than welfare.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of companies, especially this year, laid off a lot of their staff. I don't want to name anyone.
A lot of tech
But
companies coming up. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but you know what? The power balance, like, it shifts so often.
Right.
Yeah, like there was also a period of time just like last year where every employer was complaining to me, we can't hire anyone. The market is so hot. It's so hard to hire people because there were all these like Chinese companies coming into Singapore and they were like, doubling salaries and they were like, pricing our companies out of the market and all of that. So at that point in time, the Gen Zs were like, yeah, man, this is our market, this is our time, and if we don't like this sort of company, then we'll just quit and go for another job. And now the tables have reversed, tables have turned, right? And it's like people are getting really worried about this huge impending recession that's coming up, and then people are starting to get a little bit more realizing that, okay, now the tide has shifted to the employers having the power now again.
Is this a pattern that you expect to go on for the next year or two at least?
Yeah, I think that
Or will it get even worse? Where people cannot find jobs?
Yeah, well, as an ex-banker, I still have a lot of friends in the finance and banking community. Oh my God, every day they're like WhatsApping me like doom and gloom articles about like, the worldwide recession horror show, real estate prices collapsing, China no more growth and this and that. So it's like, I mean, from what we can see in the financial markets, it does not look encouraging, especially with all the political instability in Europe as well. The joke about Liz Truss lasting less than a lettuce, right? She didn't last as long as a cabbage, even in the fridge.
44 days.
Yeah.
But I think let's go back to quiet quitting because you mentioned there were 3 types.
There's two more
Oh
motivation.
I want to know.
Okay. The second type of quiet quitter is the type of person that's intentionally quiet quitting because they've got a side hustle. and or they like view their career and their time as like a portfolio. So my job is like one part of that portfolio, but I've also got, whatever trading. I've also got side hustle. I also do a YouTube channel or whatever it is. And I want to very intentionally proportion my time so that there's these other, so that I can try out different ways and, and my career is always going to be like that. It's always going to be this portfolio where I'm going to have these other aspects of myself in addition to my job. So how this is different from type 1 is that type 1 could be a temporary thing. Like I have a newborn, right? And I have an elderly parent who needs more help. Yeah. But like type 2 tends to be like, from the get-go, I realized that my job is something that is not my passion. I have something else that is my passion, like my YouTube channel or like my Etsy shop or something. And my job is kind of like it's a means from which to feed myself, and that is the function of it. Yeah. So
what advice would you give to people like this? Because I'm sure they are also a bit lost. What I realize is because I recently had a few people try to apply for the company,
Yeah.
and they shared exactly the same thing, but that's what they are doing in their current company. So what they wish to do is to leave that company, which is also banking, finance, HR, to join Titan, in which they can enrich their media career even more while still working in something that they are more passionate about and can grow their skill.
I think that it depends on what kind of role they play in a firm. If they are like in a role which doesn't require a lot of creativity and strategy and somebody to really be fully engaged, then I think it's okay as long as both company as well as employer know that, okay, this is what the gig is. We're going to hire you, you're going to deliver this, and that's it. And we're both sides, it's okay. It's like more of a transactional relationship. But like where it's like a little bit tricky is when your job, like, for example, Amanda, your job is like creative or content strategist is something that, you really need to bring a lot of you into this role. And it's something where you have to kind of like constantly grow and learn and challenge yourself, push yourself out of the comfort zone to be innovating. And the moment you quiet quit, you're not innovating. You're just saying that, I do the bare minimum, but I'm not going to actually challenge myself to grow more, do more, push out of the comfort zone and whatever. And certain roles just, that's not good enough.
Right.
Yeah. And can I go to
Yeah,
the third?
let's go to the third one.
Let's hear it.
The third kind of quiet quitters, this is when something happened in the company that made them really disengaged and actually lose heart and lose the will or the spirit to go on working there. And I think this third type is where you really have to watch out. If you look at the science of psychological safety, we actually say that when people are disengaged, it's because they experience what we call a breach of psychological safety or many breaches. So some examples are, for example, somebody ignored them or made fun of them at the workplace or shamed them, or maybe they were not treated fairly, or maybe somebody said something racist to them. In many ways, like when somebody has experienced this sort of like harm, psychological harm, or, in other words, trauma in the workplace, it can make them feel like, oh, you know what? I'll give you my hands. I'm going to give you a bit of my head, but not the innovation part. But I'm going to give you none of my heart. My heart's not there.
So like lacking the passion. So the passion is no longer there to drive the work.
It's not only not passionate, they're just not engaged. It's like the lights are on, but no one's home, right? That kind of quiet quitting is actually really toxic because, and it really requires the company to identify a trend. If there's a lot of this kind of people that are really disengaged, are just going through the motions at work, like you got to ask yourself, is it me? Am I in some way creating a culture that's not supportive of these people and their dreams and their goals and not supportive of them as individuals? Or have there been toxic behaviors at the workplace? Number one cause of toxic, of burnout, number one cause of burnout is actually toxic behaviors at work. Are there people at work shaming other people being cliquish in silos, excluding other people bullying or whatever it is, all these create environments where there's going to be not just one quiet quitter, but a lot of them, because it's a toxic workplace.
So what would you suggest a company do at this point?
You got to identify what are you remember I talked about
Yeah.
the four levels already?
Yes,
You
yes.
gotta figure out which one of these 4 levels is the biggest problem. If it's like you say inclusion, safety, it's like, okay, nobody even knows each other's names. Okay, let's do some team bonding. Let's go have a team, one team bonding event every month. Go off and do whatever movie, durian party or whatever it is. Just get together and know each other, and like as human beings and not just as transactions. Or like if it's a fairness issue, sometimes I work with companies where it's like, okay, there's 2 different parts of the company, right? And then like this part always feels shortchanged because this part is in the limelight, this part gets all attention, whatever, right? And then that becomes like a fairness issue, right? It's like, oh, I did as much work, but then, I didn't get paid or as much glam as them, whatever. So if you see these kind of structural issues, then again, you got to fix it. You got to figure out like how we messaging, like so that everyone's appreciated, so there's enough gratitude and appreciation for everyone's role in this company, etc. So it kind of requires you to run a little diagnostic or to examine and reflect on your culture and like which are the biggest threats in your culture in terms of toxic workplace behaviors.
Right.
So identifying the problem would help us identify also the solution as to how to dissolve all these conflicts.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I do. I go to work with all these companies, and like a doctor, I send them a survey. It's like
Diagnose
diagnose them. I send them a 5-minute survey. I say, okay, blast this out to all your staff, and it's like 12 questions, and then we're able to see, okay, out of these 4 levels of psychological safety, your real issue is challenges safety. Nobody wants to speak up because every time somebody speaks up, this like draconian boss comes in and like breathes fire everyone and like punishes them for, or like it could be level 2, which is learner safety. The problem here is that people are very scared of making mistakes because last time there was a mistake, somebody was scapegoated. There's a blame culture. Nobody dares to ask questions. Nobody dares to ask for support. So there's a level 2 issue. So again, like, a lot of my experience as a leadership expert is being able to diagnose what are the key issues in your culture and then start the intervention or the medicine at that level.
What is your most generic advice that you find yourself like always giving? Like your top 3 advice that you would give to almost every company?
Okay, this is a really great question. Firstly, I would say to the leaders, I always say to the leaders that I always ask them, do you share your own failures? Do you share your own mistakes? Because if you don't ever share your mistakes or your failures, the unconscious message you're giving everyone in your company is that if you want to be like me, if you want to succeed in this company, you must hide your mistakes. You must never have a failure. And that leads to a lack of learner safety, and that leads to this covering up kind of culture. So I think it's really important. Number one, I always say to leaders, like, don't just talk about the good stuff, the successes, all your milestones and all the fancy things. As a leader, you have to model the kind of courage you want to see from your staff. If you want other people to admit their mistakes, you want other people to, talk about, the errors that they've done, you have to model it. So that means every week in your meeting, can you share like, hey, this is something that I tried out this week and it didn't really work or didn't go the way I thought it would go. And I want to own that. Here's what I learned from it. Here's how I've grown from this. And this creates what we call a growth mindset. That means a culture where people believe success isn't about I got it right or the result. Success is, did I grow? Did I learn? And we're creating this learning culture together where there's no such thing as a fatal mistake because everything we can learn from, everything expands the boundaries of who we are and grows us. Yeah, so like Michael Jordan says, right, I miss more than like thousands of winning shots. I fail, and that is why I succeed. And that's how we all succeed. We succeed through failing like 1,000 times and getting up 1,001 times. And for leaders, it's really important that we need to have these real conversations to model to everybody we're not superhuman. We don't get it all right. And this makes people less fearful and conflict avoidant of us and more likely to speak up and give us those valuable data that we need.
Right. Basically more approachable to share their learnings as well, right?
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people talk about vulnerability and, you know, vulnerable leadership and being authentic and all of that. It's about being real with people and not kind of like having this like veneer of fake like invulnerability.
But do you feel that if a leader keeps, well, not keeps, but often shares mistakes, right? Would the employees start thinking or doubting the decisions that the leaders make?
I think employees doubt the leader who doesn't have clarity over what to do when the mistake happens. So for example, it's okay, it's very encouraging when a leader says like, you know, was a mistake, this is how I analyzed it, I have a plan how to get us out of here, and now we're going to try a different strategy, which is ABC. Or when a leader says, I don't know, but I have a plan for how I'm going to find out. But I think where people get a little bit ganjong, a little bit like scared, is when the leader is like, oh, you know, I don't have any clue at all. I made so many mistakes and now I'm demoralized. It's not that.
Is it okay for a leader to say, this is the problem, I don't have a plan? What do you guys think?
Yeah, 1,000%. I think but it is important for the leader to balance authenticity with authority. So you be authentic, but the way you said it, Yaya, was actually had a very clear authority there. The way you said it was really simple. Here's what's happening. I don't know. I'm in the process of collecting data. And this makes me feel, oh, I'm in safe hands. This Yaya knows what he's doing. He's got a plan. Rather than like running around like headless chicken and then demoralized. And it sounded as if you were also really calm when you said it. Yeah? And that gave me a lot of confidence in your authority. Yeah, so it's very different. I think energetically as a leader also, it's more than just the words you say. It's like how
It's how you portray yourself, right? So if you look
Yes.
like stressed and you're all like, oh man, this is the worst thing that can happen to the company, you know, and haven't dealt with this in years, then like everyone would start feeling stressed out like you, right?
It's not
Because
so
it's the
bad.
energy you
Yeah.
portray.
Every single time you enter a room, you're changing the energy. You're raising the energy, you're lowering the energy, you're making it weird, but some way you are changing the energy. And as a leader, we are the architects of culture. We create the culture that we want and we hold the space. And that is a very difficult job. That means every day when you go to work, and some level, your game face has to be on. You have to kind of bring the energy that you want to see from your team. And nobody's going to be able to deliver to you like the culture that you want if you can't actually show them and model it for them.
So like lead by example in a way. The leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. Same with kids as well. One of my therapists said to me, kids don't do as you say. Kids don't even do as you do. But kids are as you are.
Yeah.
Their quality of being is your quality of being. If you have a mother who's very neurotic and anxious or whatever and all that, that's how you remember her. Oh, my mom was always neurotic and anxious and always depressed or whatever it is. And that's so much stronger, that energy field, that kind of like, energy is so much more powerful than any specific thing you do or say as a leader.
Right. Okay. The two other
Yeah,
advice.
that's the second one.
I always have to keep track.
Counting, we are counting.
Because we asked
We
asked
asked
you
for
for your,
three
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
top three
Yeah,
advice.
so
So that is
So
the
first one would be
First thing
to
was like, talk about your own
talk about your
failures and-
mistakes,
yeah.
talk about your
Yeah.
failures,
Share your
share your
failures.
But I think there was a second thing in there, which is balance authenticity with authority. I think
Okay.
that was the second thing. It's like, yes, we want you to be authentic, but as a leader in Asia, you also have to be an authority. So that means being able to stay calm, being able to be very clear with your communication, being able to have a plan and be a strategic thinker. That's also really important. So balancing authority with authenticity and always being. And the third thing I say to leaders, we've actually already covered, which is like balance task with relationship. At every point of time, you got to ask yourself, okay, looking backwards on this week, was I like my conversations, was it very task focused? That I only go and look for Jie Hao and Yaya and like, you know, Amanda when I needed something from them? Or did I actually have like human relationship focused conversations and like ask them how I could support them, get to check in with them, know about them? Like, where is the balance? Because the needle oftentimes shifts too much in one direction or the other direction. So it's about having this regular practice of self-awareness and checking. Am I too much in relationship? Am I too much in task? And bringing it back to that sweet spot.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, I feel like
I learned a lot.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I feel like I need to rewatch this podcast.
Yeah,
and just
and
get-
Like
because
digest
you're here
it.
just like listening.
This is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, my brain can't catch up yet with what
Okay.
she has shared. But thank you so much. It was very, very insightful. And are there more things in this book that
yeah.
you didn't share?
There's a lot
Obviously.
There's a lot of stuff.
Like I feel
It's
like
so
there's
thick.
no question that you cannot answer. Like right after I ask every question, you have an answer, you have a theory,
Yeah.
you have the 4 steps, and then the 3 types of different motivators.
Wikipedia for
It's very,
For work
very
culture.
interesting to pick your brain, which is exactly what I'm going to do now.
Okay.
All right, guys. So watch the next podcast where I am about to ask Crystal some questions as a CEO. So it'd be quite interesting to see what her take is.
Yep, I can't wait for that.
Bye.
See you.